It's September 4th. As of now, he says, we still have a constitutional democracy. He demanded the Department of Justice hand over answers as to how this happened and how this keeps happening.
Well, happy Friday and welcome to the Dollemore Daily. I am not Jesse Dollemore. I am Brittany Page and I host the Page Perspective right here on YouTube. But Jesse called me in to be his guest host today because he has COVID. That's right. We were traveling over the past week, seeing some friends and family, doing some work. And unfortunately, during those travels, Jesse got COVID and he tested positive. He's doing okay. Send him some well wishes in the comments, please. Let him know that you want him to get better and return. Also send me some well wishes in the comments, not necessarily for the guest hosting, but I'm afraid I'm also going to get COVID and I'm really hoping to avoid it. Let this be a reminder that COVID is still a thing. We're going to be approaching flu season here. Mask up when you are traveling, when you're on airplanes, when you are in large groups of people. It's really important. I hope you are taking care of yourself, but I'm happy to be here today. I'm happy to be guest hosting with you all, and I'm happy to be talking about the latest news that is surely driving Donald Trump just mad, because the grand jury here in DC is instituting its own kind of resistance that I think may inspire people across the country. We're going to get into it in a moment. If you don't know what's happening in DC, if you don't live here, if you don't know what it's like on the ground, there's a federal takeover here in DC. And there's an increase in federal agents patrolling the streets on foot, harassing communities of color, going into people's neighborhoods and harassing them on the porches of their own homes. There's ICE, a huge influx in ICE agents taking to the street, masked, completely with their faces covered, kidnapping community members. We have National Guard armed in the streets, stationed at metros as an intimidation tactic. I mean, you go out in public and it's nerve-wracking. It's disturbing. Luckily, we've seen community mobilization in numerous different ways. I mean, these federal agents will sometimes set up checkpoints in the streets where they're checking papers. And in response to that, community members will go in front of the checkpoint, hold up signs and say, ICE ahead, turn around, and warn community members. We have people who have volunteered to walk kids to school to ensure that they can get to school safely without being harassed by ICE, without being harassed by these federal agents. We have people passing around information about what to do when you see ICE kidnapping a member of your community. We have people filming ICE and standing in the gap, ensuring that you can get information about who they are kidnapping, who they are taking, so that their family can find them. There's been amazing community mobilization, and we have a latest example here in grand jurors in DC refusing to indict on the cases that come before them. Upsetting U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro, that's right, another Fox News host that was appointed by Donald Trump to be in this administration. She's not happy about this either, so we can all feel pretty good about this news today, I think, about this resistance. Let's look at this Scott McFarland tweet. New federal judge erupts at Justice Department in hearing. Judge says Trump admin is playing cops and robbers like children in Washington, D.C. right now. Embarrassment and shame. So there's been several cases where the U.S. Attorney's Office, Jeanine Pirro's office, Fox News host Pirro, her office will bring an indictment, will bring charges before the grand jury, and the grand jury refuses to indict the person that they are attempting to charge with a felony. I think the most prominent example that we saw of this was the sandwich guy, the guy who threw the Subway sandwich, who became kind of a hero in DC, where there were like murals painted at Union Market and just in different places around the city. It was really nice to see. But let's actually get into this reporting, and then we're gonna do a video from Scott McFarland explaining one of the cases where the jurors refused to indict. For a second time this week, a federal grand jury declined to indict a defendant accused of threatening to kill President Donald Trump. Now, let me just pause because that's pretty serious, right? I mean, you're threatening to kill the president of the United States, and yet you bring these charges before the grand jury and they say, no, we don't support the indictment of this person. Not a great track record just starting off here for Jeanine Pirro. Going back to the article, U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro's office informed a magistrate judge Tuesday afternoon that a grand jury had refused charges against Edward Alexander Dana. Magistrate Judge G. Michael Harvey denied a request from prosecutors not to disclose that information to Dana's attorney. Dana's case marks at least the 7th time since Donald Trump's federal surge began in D.C. that a grand jury has declined to support charges filed by Pirro's office. It's also the second time prosecutors have failed to secure charges against a defendant accused of threatening Trump. Earlier Tuesday, WUSA 9 reported a grand jury had refused to indict another defendant, Natalie Rose Jones of New York, for allegedly making threats against Trump online. Grand juries nearly always return indictments in federal cases because they are tasked with deciding only whether there is a reasonable basis to support charging a crime, a much lower burden than in criminal trials, and because they typically made their decisions after hearing evidence only from the government. Dana's attorney, Assistant Federal Public Defender Elizabeth Mullen, said in her more than 20-year career as a defense attorney, she had never seen a similar spree of refusals to indict. So we don't actually know the reason for this, right? But we can assume that it is a failure on the part of the government to actually deliver evidence to the grand jury that would then secure an indictment, because that's their job. That's their role. I'm sure that Donald Trump or one of the many sycophants that he has in his administration, they would look at this and say, oh, great, this jury is stacked with radical activists who are looking to take Donald Trump down and support people who are making threats on his life. But actually, maybe the grand jury is made up of people who are taking their role very seriously and are ensuring that the government has evidence for the charges that they want to bring and that the charges they want to bring are valid. And it seems like that's not the case based on this track record here. And would we be surprised that Judge Jeanine Pirro from Fox News is not very successful at her job? I mean, they appoint these people in these positions like they just go on TV and talk. No, you have an actual job to do. This job is actually difficult to do. Are you capable of doing it? No, they're not, the many Fox News hosts. So let's get to this video of Scott MacFarlane going a little bit deeper specifically about this Edward Dana case. And you can hear all about what happened in the courtroom when things erupted, as he says.
Hey, it's Scott MacFarlane at D.C. Federal Court. I just stepped outside to brief you on what just happened because it was quite something. Judge Sia Faraqui just uncorked a 20-minute raised voice stem winder against the Department of Justice, accusing the feds and the administration of creating a constitutional crisis. It went on so long and so powerfully, he concluded by saying, it's September 4th. As of now, we still have a constitutional democracy. Here's what happened. The feds, 30 minutes before a preliminary hearing for a man named Edward Dana, announced they were dismissing the felony charge against Edward Dana, the latest in a series of federal cases they have sought to dismiss amid this Trump D.C. clampdown on all the recent arrests. Dana was accused of breaking a light fixture, of being drunk, of allegedly claiming that he was part of the Russian mafia, that he wanted to fight fascism, even if it meant killing a president. Those were the accusations. The feds brought a felony charge of threats against the president. The defense attorney said even a 15-year-old would know that's not a felony threat against president type case. But Dana was locked up for a week. And just before his preliminary hearing, the feds say the felony case is gone. The judge, Sia Faraqui, said this is happening too much, too many mistakes, too many dropped cases, that there's embarrassment and shame for the Department of Justice, and that the message to people who look like Mr. Dana is, be very afraid. And the judge went on from there, saying that the defense may have remedies for false imprisonment, may seek money. And the judge also argued that it's September 4th. As of now, he says, we still have a constitutional democracy. He demanded the Department of Justice hand over answers as to how this happened and how this keeps happening in the recent cases. The judge says we're acting like this is normal. It seems like the feds are making arrests first and asking questions or seeing if it's okay later. And then made this allusion, saying the administration seems to be playing cops and robbers like children. They seem to have time to issue stats on Twitter and Truth Social, he said, about arrests, but doesn't seem to have time to answer for the people who are mistakenly arrested. Edward Dana walked out of court a few minutes ago, a free man. His case is now over.
So several things come up for me here, and many of you, I'm sure, know that Jesse and I received rape and death threats recently from a Trump supporter, and it took almost a year in order to actually secure an arrest and get a court date and have that person be sentenced. And it was never a felony charge, I'll say that. And the fact that, the Judge Jeanine Pirro is going so hard at these people who, it sounds like he made like a casual remark when he may have been intoxicated or not feeling well. I honestly don't know. The grand jury seems to know more, and they know that it didn't meet the criteria in order to charge him with a felony in this Edward Dana case. So it's frustrating to actually be a victim of a crime and have dealt with the criminal justice system and seen firsthand how if you're just a regular person, it's actually really difficult to get justice. But if you're the president of the United States, you get to use the federal government and weaponize the federal government against people that aren't actually committing crimes. That's kind of a frustrating situation here. But, good for this grand jury as they are doing their job. I said at the top of the video that they are, joining the resistance, and it's not necessarily that, right? But I mean, so much of what we're seeing in resistance is just standing for human rights. And that's what this grand jury is doing. They know their job, they know their role, and they're following their job. They're following their role, like so many community members here in DC are doing. They're standing in the gap. They're following the rules of engagement right now, and they're going out and they're protecting community members and informing people of their rights and protecting those rights. And that's exactly what the jury members are doing here. So it's good to see. And I know jury duty is not great. Jesse actually served on a federal grand jury for a year. It's a really big commitment. It's a really difficult thing to do. But if you can, please do, because we need people who take their jobs very seriously when they're on a jury, because these people are proof of that. These people on the current DC grand jury are doing the hard work, doing their job, and standing in the gap so that Donald Trump cannot weaponize and abuse the justice system. Jeanine Pirro cannot weaponize and abuse the justice system, and they're standing for what's right. Well, we are off to a strong start here, I think, in terms of stories, in terms of the news. I'm feeling good about this one. Normally when I talk about the news, it can feel really horrible and terrible, and it feels like things are not going well, and that's how it is most of the time. But right now we have a good story, so that's nice.
How am I a threat?
Secretary Kennedy, for the first time, we're seeing deaths from children from measles. We haven't seen that in 2 decades. We're seeing that under your watch. You are a hazard.
A fiery RFK hearing where we finally got to see the anger that so many of us feel as RFK is dismantling our public health infrastructure. My name is Brittany Page. I host the Page Perspective on YouTube. Today, though, I am Jesse's guest host. Why? Jesse has COVID. That's right. We were traveling. We flew on a plane. And, when you're in airports, you're surrounded by people whose number one hobby is coughing into the air, just coughing directly into the air. And surely someone coughed directly into the air and right into Jesse's mouth, probably. That's what happened, I imagine. And that's how he got COVID. I know you might be wondering, wow, is Brittany a germaphobe? No, I'm just, hyper concerned about germs and people coughing into the air, as we all should be. But let this be a reminder to you that COVID is still a thing, and you should mask up when you are on planes. You should not cough directly into the air and into people's mouths. And RFK is dismantling our public health infrastructure. Hopefully you live in a state where you can get the COVID vaccination. Luckily, though, RFK is being called to testify before Congress because of his behavior, because of the choices that he is making to dismantle our public health infrastructure and put millions of lives at risk. RFK recently called before the committee after firing the Trump-appointed CDC director, Susan Menares, who had been in the role for like a month. Trump-appointed, Trump supporter. She says he came to her and wanted her to rubber stamp recommendations from CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, ACIP. It's this panel that RFK fired every single member of and handpicked replacements that are anti-vaccine activists so that he can continue to abuse our public health system and put millions of Americans at risk. He also canceled $500 million worth of mRNA research contracts. It's been an all-out assault on vaccinations. We knew it would be. He's a lifelong anti-vaccine activist. He's not a scientist. He has no scientific training. This is a hobby for him. He reads about conspiracy theories online and enjoys that and thinks it's fun. And now he's the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He's absolutely drunk with power. During his testimony, he was smug. He was disrespectful. He knows he's untouchable, and that's really scary. I want to do a call to action up front. Please call your elected officials and demand that they pressure RFK to resign or Donald Trump to fire RFK. I know at this point it seems like not a lot matters, but this really does matter. And there's a lot of potential here because there is some bipartisan agreement with Republicans and Democrats here about the dangers of RFK. And we're going to see that as we go through these various clips to illustrate, number one, RFK is a liar. And number two, that there is this bipartisan agreement that there's a problem here. So please, if you have the time today, make a call to your elected official and tell them that RFK needs to resign, that they need to be speaking publicly, calling for his resignation, or for Donald Trump to fire him. Now we're going to go through some clips here, okay? The first one we're going to start with is Bill Cassidy. And their exchange here is about Operation Warp Speed. Now, this was the government partnership to ensure the development and distribution of COVID vaccinations during the pandemic, which saved millions of lives. Bill Cassidy, unfortunately, doesn't really have a lot of credibility when it comes to questioning RFK because his vote was the one that advanced RFK's nomination for a vote in the Senate. Now, sure, he gave a speech saying that he had reservations about doing that because Bill Cassidy is himself a physician. So he said, yeah, I'm nervous about doing this, everybody, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to vote to advance his nomination. And I'm doing that because RFK has agreed to these regular babysitting check-ins. I'm going to babysit this man and he will be controlled by me. He will listen to me. That did not go well at all. And we can see that even in this brief exchange, which I'm going to play for you. So let's talk about this clip after we watch.
And I'm approaching this as a doctor, not as a senator. I am concerned about children's health, seniors' health, all of our health. And I applaud you for joining the president in a call for radical transparency. Thank you for that. I said yesterday, I believe it, that President Trump deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed. If he had been President Obama, he would have gotten it. But because of Operation Warp Speed, forcing the federal government to come to a vaccine development within 10 months when others said it couldn't be done, we saved millions of lives globally, trillions of dollars, we reopened economies, an incredible accomplishment. Mr. Secretary, do you agree with me that the president deserves a Nobel Prize for Operation Warp Speed?
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. That was phenomenal.
So let me ask you, but you just told Senator Bennett that the COVID vaccine killed more people than COVID.
Wait,
that was a statement.
I did not say that.
Okay, then let me ask, because you also
Senator, I just want to make clear, I did not say that.
We'll check the record. That's a question of fact. You also said that you were also, as lead attorney for the Children's Health Defense, you engaged in multiple lawsuits attempting to restrict access to the COVID vaccine. Again, it surprises me that you think so highly of Operation Warp Speed when, as an attorney, you attempted to restrict access. Now, let me ask.
I'm happy to explain why.
I have 3 minutes and 30 seconds left.
All right.
Okay, so I think this is a nice little effort on the part of Bill Cassidy, and other senators also tried this, where you are talking about the Nobel Peace Prize for Donald Trump on Operation Warp Speed to try to get RFK to signal his support for vaccines and support of Donald Trump's efforts, and trying to kind of commingle this so that you signal to people watching it, you signal to Trump supporters watching it that, hey, we believe Donald Trump should get a Nobel Peace Prize for the work that he did supporting vaccines. RFK, please support that idea. Do you support vaccines? And no, he doesn't. He's an anti-vaccine activist. He always has been. He always will be. And the point is, you shouldn't have let him get into this position in the first place, Bill Cassidy. Bill Cassidy is one of the many people who's going to have blood on his hands for this decision because of what RFK is planning to do with vaccinations. And it's genuinely scary. I mean, Bill knew his record and voted to advance his nomination and voted to confirm him. So now he can stand there, he can sit there and ask these questions and try to do these little tricks to get him to support vaccinations, try to create external pressure that has him supporting vaccinations, but it's not going to work. He has the power now. You know, one thing I noticed about RFK, in addition to being completely drunk on power and feeling very secure in his position as Secretary of Health and Human Services, is that he has a particular contempt for women. And maybe this is something you only notice or you have a heightened awareness of when you're a woman, but watching it was very, very disturbing. And in one exchange in particular with Senator Tina Smith, who I know Jesse has interviewed, a very, very nice woman, very smart woman, she asked about RFK and comments that he has specifically made in response to mass shootings, trying to blame antidepressants for mass shootings. Let's watch this exchange.
Just last week, in the days after the tragic shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in my home state of Minnesota, you went on Fox News blaming school shootings on antidepressants. You have no evidence of that because you have no evidence of a connection. And you want to talk about...
You're just saying something. You're just making stuff up.
You know, this is what you say, right? Secretary Kennedy, when someone presents you with information that does not fit...
I did not blame that shooting. I have no idea whether... I have no idea, and I never said that. You're making it up. You're twisting. Yeah, you are.
Secretary
you are being
Kennedy,
dishonest right now.
If you want to talk about mental health and gun violence in this country... If you want to talk about mental health and gun violence in this country, we should be talking about that, because that's what the parents of Annunciation School
You don't want to talk. You want to harangue, and you want to politically. You want to have partisan politics. I want to actually solve these problems.
Ms. Secretary Kennedy, what the Trump administration is doing right now is making it harder for people in this country to get access to mental health care. So don't talk to me about solving the mental health care crisis when you are making it harder. You cut Medicaid, which is the #1 payer for mental health care services in this country. You decimated the agency at Health and Human Services that focuses on mental health and substance abuse. That's what states count on. They're cutting their services to schools as a result of that. Several years ago, in a bipartisan way, Congress came together and passed the Safer Communities Act, which made important investments in mental health care and did some important, though small things, to reduce access to guns. What do? You propose cutting that funding.
Tina Smith is exactly right there. And we always hear this from Republicans because it's anything other than the guns, right? They want to blame anything other than the guns. And so they will often talk about mental health as being the antecedent that caused a mass shooting. And instead of investing in supportive services to treat mental health disorders, they cut that funding. And they did that again. And RFK sits there and he defends those cuts, actually denies that they're even taking place because he's a liar. And he calls Tina Smith a liar that he has blamed antidepressants for mass shootings. Now, I want you to save this video because we're going to go through the many, many receipts here of RFK, not just one time, not just 2 times, but repeatedly over the course of months, years, making comments connecting mass shooting events to antidepressants, which is disgusting because you're watching this right now. You may be on antidepressants. Millions of Americans are on antidepressants. As we know, millions of people in other countries are on antidepressants. And other countries, again, do not have the mass shooting problem that we have. Why? It's the access to the guns. But anything to not talk about that, right? Let's start with RFK's specific comments about antidepressants and the shooting that Tina Smith was just asking him about. Now, he said she's a liar, that he doesn't blame antidepressants for mass shooting events. I guess you can be the judge.
Prevented, and we're still trying to get a lot of answers to a ton of questions. But the one thing is clear, you are dealing with a a person who's trans, that was transitioning. Are you going to be examining at all some of the drugs that are used in order to make that transition happening, to see if it plays a role? Because we also know there was a trans shooter in the Tennessee situation.
Yeah, we are doing those kind of studies now at NIH. We're launching studies on the potential contribution of some of the SSRI drugs and some of the other psychiatric drugs that might be contributing to violence. You know, many of them on there have black box warnings that warn of suicidal ideation and homicidal ideation. So we can't exclude those as a culprit, and those are the kind of studies that we're doing.
So I've never seen that medicine, but you're saying that if you get it, some of the side effects could be homicide, suicide?
Well, there are black box warnings on some of these psychiatric drugs that warn about, in their clinical trials, that they saw suicidal and homicidal ideation. So, you know, we are going into that with an open mind.
So yet again, with any clip that I play of RFK Jr. talking, there are many things to address. Let's start with the black box warning that he talks about. He says that the black box warning states that there's an increased risk of homicidal ideation, thoughts of killing other people. That is not true. There are warnings on antidepressants that say they have the potential to increase suicidal ideation, not homicidal ideation. And so RFK continues to be a liar and to misrepresent the thing that he is supposed to be in charge of right now. He also continues to act like we're starting these studies for the first time. No, these issues are continuously studied. They didn't start with him. He's not exposing anything. These have been ongoing research questions. They will continue to be ongoing research questions, regardless of what position RFK is in. And, you know, with Fox really starting talking about the identities of the previous school shooters that they're talking about, or the previous mass shooters that they're talking about, whenever we have this endless parade of white men that have been mass shooters over the course of many, many years, it doesn't prompt conservatives to get on TV and say, what are we going to do about these white men that are causing all of these mass shootings? No, but when they can latch onto a specific identity of a vulnerable group that they already demonize, they are eager to get in on that action. And it's really, really disturbing. But I can't get away from this idea of him continuing to link antidepressants to mass shooting events when, you know, famously, people are only depressed in America. I mean, we may have more reasons to be depressed, quite frankly, right now, but depression is not an American issue, okay? People across in different countries also have mental health disorders. That is not something unique to Americans. So, but you might say, well, that's just one clip. And he didn't necessarily blame the shooting. He raised it as a possible factor in the shooting. Well, let's keep going through some of these clips so that not only am I showing the receipts, not only do they live on Jesse's channel, but you'll be able to share this video with someone that you need to educate about RFK Jr.'s background in what he has said about antidepressants. So let's get to this next clip where he is actually sitting with Greg Abbott, again, talking about antidepressants.
You know, places like Uvalde have experienced one of the worst mass shootings in history. The CDC has previously been responsible for studying gun violence. A lot of those programs have been cut now. Would you still consider gun violence a public health crisis? And who's going to be...
I certainly consider mass shootings a health crisis, and we are doing for the first time real studies to find out what the etiology of that is. And we're looking for the first time at psychiatric drugs. You know, these kind of mass shooting, people have had guns in this country forever. When I was a kid, we had shooting clubs at our school. People, kids, my classmates, other people, would bring a .22 rifle with their guns to school and park it in the parking lot. Nobody was shooting. So there's never been a time in America, in the history of humanity, when people walked into a crowd, into a church or a movie theater or a school or a crowd of strangers and just started randomly shooting. It's happening in our country. It's not happening around the world. And there are many other countries that have comparable levels of guns that we have in this country. We had comparable levels in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and people weren't doing that. Something changed, and it dramatically changed human behavior. And one of the culprits we need to examine is whether the fact that we are the most over-medicated nation in the world, and that a lot of those are psychiatric drugs that have black box warnings on them that warn of suicidal and homicidal ideation. So we are doing those studies right now for the first time, and we will have an answer.
Okay, so he's again saying that the culprit is medications. The culprit is psychiatric drugs. He specifically says that. And again, he's lying about the black box warning. So this is a man whose primary goal is to ban life-saving medications. Antidepressants are life-saving medications. He wants to ban vaccinations. He doesn't care about the science. He keeps saying this is the first time we're studying this. This isn't the first time. This isn't a new thing. He's not getting in there and looking at questions that have never been asked before. What does he think everyone's been doing for decades? These questions are being studied and have been studied on an ongoing basis. Antidepressants, safety, all of this stuff, it has been studied. And he's acting like I'm going to get in there. I'm going to study it for the first time. No, you're not. That is not what is happening here. It is so frustrating. But here again, now he's going to add a medication here. It's not just antidepressants in this one. It's another medication, benzodiazepines, often prescribed for anti-anxiety, for relaxation. Maybe you've had one, Xanax, Klonopin. This is him on the Sean Ryan show, again, talking about the dangers of antidepressants.
There's a lot of Americans who believe that the only reason the Second Amendment hasn't come under assault is because of the Second Amendment. And, you know, I at a time when our country is so divided, I don't think it's not something that I'm going to do. So I believe in the Constitution. The Second Amendment is part of the Constitution, and I believe in upholding the Constitution. I'll say this. What I've said, and, you know, people have criticized me for saying it, is we should figure out why we're having these school shootings and, you know, what is the covariable, because it doesn't seem to have anything to do with gun proliferation. But they never ask the question. And with the mass shooters, it's the first question I always ask, were they on SSRIs or benzos? And, you know, this isn't the only covariable. Other stuff has happened. There's, you know, social media has exploded at the same time. Video games have exploded. There's a number of things that common sense would tell you, okay, these are potential culprits in this explosion of mass shootings. And, you know, I have a scientific mind, and I look at this and say, it can't be just the guns. There's 120 million SSRI prescriptions every year in this country. 120 million, I think, Prozac, 120 million Adderall prescriptions.
That's half the country right there almost.
Right. And so, you know, do these drugs have anything to do with it?
The first question he always asks, were the shooters on SSRIs or benzos? But hey, Senator Tina Smith, you are the liar. You are misrepresenting what RFK has said about antidepressants. No, this again, RFK is just a liar. He went before Congress and he lied repeatedly about what he actually believes. Why is he so ashamed of what he actually believes? Just come out and say it like you do on these podcasts, right? He's praising guns. He also says, the first question that he asks about the shooters, were they on SSRIs or benzos? Has he ever taken a benzo? I would bet money RFK has taken a benzo, okay? He's taken a benzodiazepine. And so I'm just kind of confused. You know, like how you take a Klonopin and you want to commit a mass shooting? You take a Xanax and you get like super violent and angry and you want to shoot everyone. No, you feel relaxed. You feel calm, okay? So I don't know what he's talking about here. Again, Secretary of Health and Human Services, absolutely horrifying stuff. But let's do one more before we get to the final mic drop of the committee hearing, which came from Senator Raphael Warnock. We're going to get to that in a moment. But here's just one more clip so that we know his attack on Senator Tina Smith when he said that she was misrepresenting his words about SSRIs and shootings, when he said that she was lying. It's actually RFK who is the liar.
And, the same is true, Mark, with all these shootings. Nobody is looking at the pharmaceutical contribution to that.
Yep.
That the anecdotally, it appears that almost every one of these shooters were on SRIs or some other psychiatric drug. And this is only happening in America, where all these people are taking these psychiatric drugs.
I've listened to that clip now a few times, and I still can't believe that we have a Secretary of Health and Human Services that is saying that only Americans take antidepressants. I mean, what are we doing here? This is just, I cannot believe this man was rewarded with power and that he knows it, and he gets to sit there and be so smug and proud that he's in this position and that he feels untouchable. This man who knows nothing, who has no education or experience in this area, who is an anti-science eugenicist. It is absolutely maddening. And I mean, again, just so many things, but anything to not talk about the guns. Anything to avoid talking about the guns. He also doesn't ever talk about systemic issues. He's not worried about why Americans are depressed, why Americans are experiencing depression, the systemic issues that exist with the working class having their necks stepped on by the wealthy, and this system that has been built to keep the working class down. So many things about RFK drive me absolutely wild. I cannot. Listening to him talk is the most infuriating thing. But I want to play this clip of Senator Raphael Warnock, because I feel like, sometimes we sit through these committee hearings and we hear the questioning, and it's frustrating to see when Democrats are cordial and, doing that respectability thing where they can't actually engage in an honest way with someone who's a liar before Congress. And Senator Raphael Warnock, many of the senators did a very good job questioning RFK. But I was particularly appreciative of Senator Raphael Warnock, and I think you'll see why.
Okay, I think that we all have a history of listening to you and these answers, but you're on the record for a number of these statements. Despite your lack of credentials and expertise, clearly you have an agenda. It is a threat to the public health of the American people. It's clear that you are carrying out your extremist beliefs, which is why you attempted to fire Dr.
Senator, we're the
Menarez.
sickest people in the world.
I'm
we're the sickest people on earth.
I'm speaking.
How am I a threat?
Secretary Kennedy, for the first time, we're seeing deaths from children from measles. We haven't seen that in 2 decades. We're seeing that under your watch. You are a hazard to the health of the American people.
Can I respond to that, Senator?
No, I claim back my time.
We need to wrap
You are
up.
a hazard to the health of the American people. I think that you ought to resign. And if you don't resign, the President of the United States, who put forward Operation Warp Speed, which worked, should fire you. Thank you so much.
This is exactly right. He is a hazard to the health of the American people. Exactly. And more people need to say it. More people need to say it to his face. He needs to be constantly confronted. And like I said, I did the action item up front. I'm going to do it again as a reminder now that you've seen all of this. Please, this man is not qualified to be in his position. He wasn't qualified before he was confirmed. Unfortunately, he has been given this power, but that doesn't mean we give up, because there's so much at risk here. I have long said that RFK is the most dangerous member of the cabinet, and I believe that. There are millions of lives on the line here, and it's not just what he's doing with the COVID vaccine. This panel ACIP that he replaced with his hand-picked anti-vaccine activists. They're meeting, I believe, on between September 14th and 19th, I believe. The date is somewhere in there, maybe the 18th or 19th. And they're planning to review numerous vaccinations. And so I'm afraid. I'm afraid for what's going to happen there, especially since the CDC director, the Trump-appointed CDC director that was just fired, she said that she was asked to rubber stamp recommendations in advance. He wants someone who will do whatever he wants them to do. So naturally, the next CDC director is going to be that person, handpicked for that reason. So call your elected officials, demand that they publicly call for RFK Jr.'s resignation, call for him to be fired, because millions and millions of lives are on the line. What do you think? Call and let me know, 714-576-4054, or send an email to daily@dollemore.com. Again, my name is Brittany Page. I host my own channel, The Page Perspective. You can subscribe to it there. I will link to it below. When are these networks going to learn? I mean, they're paying out these massive lawsuits because of the things that are said on their air, and still you're learning nothing valuable. Well, we have some conservative media infighting, and you love to see it. My name is Brittany Page. I host The Page Perspective on YouTube, but that's not what this is. No, I am the guest host today for Jesse. Unfortunately, Jesse has COVID. So please comment below, send him some well wishes, let him know that you hope he returns soon. We all hope he gets better soon. Also send me some well wishes because I hope I don't end up with COVID. I'm a little nervous, right? We were traveling and we were flying, and I feel like anytime I travel, it's a huge risk of getting sick. So a reminder, COVID is still a thing. Mask up when you are in places with a bunch of people, when you are traveling, when you're on planes. Please protect yourself. Please take care of yourself. And I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Thank you to Jesse for allowing me to guest host. And I love it because we get to talk about some infighting with conservative media. There's been a lot of discussions surrounding the independent media space, the ways that Donald Trump is coming after the media, what he's doing with CBS News, and how Barry Weiss may be taking over there. That's another disturbing story. But right now, we're going to talk about reporting related to Newsmax, specifically Newsmax suing Fox News for allegedly abusing monopoly power. And Newsmax actually has targeted Jesse's channel before. Now, what happens is we play these clips, and you've watched Jesse's show. If you've watched my show, Page Perspective on YouTube, go subscribe, a little plug. We often play news clips from other organizations. And sometimes what happens is you'll get a little notification from YouTube where they say that there's been a copyright claim by a certain organization. And you have to respond to that. And potentially what happens is it interferes with your monetization. So YouTube can turn off your monetization because the owner of that copyright is claiming that they get the money that you're making off the YouTube video. And if your video is monetized, that's how you make money. That's how independent media channels make money, is through monetization on YouTube. And so I actually want to show this. This is a recent video where Newsmax again, who's suing Fox News for allegedly abusing monopoly power, they made a copyright claim on one of Jesse's videos. He got this message: "Hi Jesse, copyrighted content has been detected in your video. Kristi Noem mocked into silence, and combat veteran who peacefully protested arrested September 2nd, 2025. The visibility of your video is not impacted, but you can no longer monetize it. The copyright owner is now either monetizing it or receiving analytics about it. This is not a copyright strike and does not affect your channel." So what that means is Newsmax filed a claim against one of Jesse's videos, but here's what happens. And I think he did a recent video actually about Dr. Phil doing this to him as well. There's been numerous outlets that have done it over the years, but you get to, under fair use, talk about clips from these organizations. If Jesse were to take a clip from Newsmax and just play a Newsmax clip on his channel, then they would have a claim there. They would have a copyright claim to that material. But under fair use, you can play a clip and talk about it. And that's what he does every time. But Newsmax, like many of these other organizations, seem to want to shut down discussion of the clips that come from their work. I mean, I would be ashamed of the work I do too if I worked at Newsmax. You know, I'd be all over that. I'd be like, shut that down, take that clip down. I don't want you to talk about that. So obviously they're going after channels like Jesse's for that reason. But now they're also going after Fox News. Let's read this reporting from CNBC. Newsmax filed a lawsuit Wednesday accusing conservative media giant Fox News of acting as a monopoly and suppressing its right-leaning competitors. Quote, Fox has sought to protect and expand its monopoly power in the right-leaning pay TV news market by engaging in a suite of anti-competitive behaviors, attorneys for the outlet wrote in the suit in federal court in Southern Florida. The lawyers allege that Fox News coerces distributors into exclusionary and restrictive agreements, and that it has used intimidation tactics to hurt Newsmax, including hiring private detective firms to investigate Newsmax executives. Now, that is quite the accusation, hiring private detective firms to investigate Newsmax executives. I mean, it's tough when you have Newsmax over here and Fox News over here, because it's just the worst of the worst. And, you know, whose side are you on? You don't want anyone to win, right? They're both horrible. But the fact that they are going at each other seems to be a good thing, at least from my perspective. Let's continue reading from this article. Quote, but for Fox's anti-competitive behavior, Newsmax would have achieved greater pay TV distribution, seen its audience and ratings grow sooner, gained earlier critical mass for major advertisers, and become overall a more valuable media property, they wrote in the suit. A Fox News spokesperson curtly replied, Newsmax cannot sue their way out of their own competitive failures in the marketplace to chase headlines simply because they can't attract viewers. Ooh. Now, you'd think actually that if Newsmax was worried about gaining critical mass for major advertisers and becoming more of a known quantity when compared to Fox News, that they wouldn't be going after smaller channels like Jesse's to remove content that they claim is theirs. You'd think actually that they would enjoy smaller channels talking about clips from Newsmax. Like, that would actually benefit them. But instead, they're attacking smaller channels. I'm sure Jesse's not the only one who has experienced them trying to shut down the monetization on his videos because he's talking about clips from Newsmax. It's just kind of an interesting way to go about getting viewers. If you want people to have eyes on your channel, eyes on your work, then you'd want as many people as possible talking about that. I don't know. That's what it seems like to me. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let's get back to this reporting. Quote, in a phone interview with CNBC later Wednesday, Newsmax CEO Christopher Ruddy shot back, then why did they spend so much time throughout the years blocking and suppressing us? Ruddy is a former reporter for the New York Post, the tabloid owned by Rupert Murdoch, the media magnate who created Fox News. The antitrust complaint is the latest legal headache for Fox News, which has been the target of multiple high-profile and pricey lawsuits in recent years. In 2023, Fox News agreed to pay over $787 million to settle a defamation suit over false claims set on its air about Dominion voting systems rigging the 2020 presidential election. In August, Newsmax also agreed to pay $67 million to settle similar defamation claims. A similar suit, similar being used a lot, filed by another voting machine company, Smartmatic, is currently headed for trial. Smartmatic is seeking $2.7 billion. Newsmax, meanwhile, earlier settled a similar lawsuit and paid $40 million to Smartmatic. They're like competing, right? Because they're both news outlets that promote falsehoods. And so they are both kind of victims of these defamation lawsuits because of the people that they hire, the people they allow on air, and the things that they report on and say. So, I mean, great that they're going after each other. I don't know, maybe they will stop coming after people like Jesse, after smaller channels. And when are these networks going to learn? I mean, they're paying out these massive lawsuits because of the things that are said on their air. And still, I mean, if you watch Fox News, I know Jesse talks about the clips. If you watch Newsmax, it's just garbage. It's just the worst of the worst. I mean, you're learning nothing valuable if you watch those channels. You're just listening to the worst of our society spewing their biases and their hatred and their vitriol, even as they are the ones in power, right? Republicans have all the power. You'd think that they would be happy. You'd think they would be jovial and feel like, everything is going exactly the way that they wanted it to. And still, they can't be happy, guys. What's going on? You can't be happy.
22,000 jobs added in the month of August. That was much less than the expectation.
Donald Trump was right, and we are all impressed.
Right.
Can Donald Trump fire everyone? That's the big question today, given that 3 of his favorite bootlickers went on TV to defend the deteriorating labor market, the terrible job numbers, the unemployment rate that is its highest since 2021. Can he fire all of these people that went on TV and gave different explanations for the terrible job numbers? That's going to be our question today. My name is Brittany Page. I host the Page Perspective on YouTube. I am guest hosting for Jesse today because he is out with COVID. Please send him some well wishes in the comments below. I'm sure he would appreciate reading them. And mask up, get vaccinated if you can find one. I know that might be hard to do because of RFK Jr., but let's hope that we can. Let's hope that we do. And let's talk about what's happening with the economy. So remember last month when Donald Trump fired the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics after a weak jobs report, calling her figures rigged, saying that they were intended to make him and Republicans look bad. It isn't about his policies. It isn't about the tariffs. It's that the numbers were manipulated to make him look bad. Always the case. And then he moved to replace her with a Heritage Foundation economist who was actually present at the January 6th insurrection as a bystander, that's what he says, and who has long been critical of the organization that he now is nominated to lead. And as CNN is reporting just today, has maintained an online media presence filled with derogatory posts, whether sexually explicit and abusive or bigoted, misogyny, conspiracy theories, you name it. This guy also, there were reports a couple weeks ago, a few days ago, that he has a picture of Hitler's favorite ship prominently featured in his office. So it's like it's just one Nazi after another here that they are putting into positions of power. Very concerning, but anything to avoid reality, because Donald Trump is devastating the economy. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's not a genius. I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but he's going to be struggling with this news today. And here's why. Let's start with this clip when Fox announced the job numbers.
Go through them, Lauren. I sure do. 22,000 jobs added in the month of August. That was much less than the expectation of 75,000, guys. The July number was revised. I will get to revisions in a moment. Unemployment rate coming in as expected, 4.3%. So that would be higher than July's 4.2%. Again, 22,000 jobs added in August. Let me get you the revisions because this is what everybody is focused on. For June and July together, combined 21,000 jobs lower than previously reported. I'll categorize that now. So you see for June, it was revised down by 27,000, getting you to negative 13,000, and the change for July up by 6,000, getting you to 79,000.
So normally when we get a clip like this, it's like Maria Bartiromo visibly upset about what she's having to report, barely able to get the words out of her mouth, really struggling to inform people of the reality of Donald Trump's economic policies and the effects that they're having. And you see it a little bit there, right? Announcing that obviously the number is much lower than expected, talking about the unemployment rate as though that was somewhat expected, although it's higher, right? There's like some hedging there in how it was described. But again, the real focus here, I think, is the way that the Trump administration seems incapable of landing on an explanation here, because they can't come forward and say, Donald Trump's economic policies are hurting Americans. Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing. They can't say that, but they also can't seem to land on a uniform explanation for why this is happening. So let's go through 3 different clips from 3 different representatives of the Trump administration. This first one is going to be Howard Lutnick, notorious bootlicker for Donald Trump, Secretary of Commerce. Let's hear his explanation.
Of numbers, though, that come out of a group like BLS, what the American public, what the world public, the CEOs in America, the Fed, anybody who's making decisions on these numbers, actually, they don't want someone who's there to win. They just want somebody who's there going to give them the most accurate, timely numbers that possibly exist. Just accuracy is probably the only thing that they want. So what I'm asking is today, when we see those numbers, whether we should believe they're accurate.
I think they'll get better because she'll take out the people who are just trying to create noise against the president. Take out the people trying to create noise. Let's get the accurate numbers, because this is going to be the greatest growth economy, right? 6 months from now, a year from today, as these trillions of dollars of plants and factories, you've seen all these pictures. There are just so many factories going in. The employment situation in America is going to be so impressive. Look, we've got 3% GDP growth. Nothing wrong with the growth we're going to have the rest of this year. But the Donald Trump economy, the explosive power of his tariff policy, his plants being built in America, to come home and build advanced manufacturing in America, when that comes starting 6 months from today to a year from today, you're just going to be impressed. I'm going to come on your show, and I'm going to make you say, Donald Trump was right, and we are all impressed.
Right.
So this is one of their favorite explanations. One of their go-tos is, things are bad now. Things don't look great now. But you just wait. Things are going to get so great. All these plans are going to fall into place and things are going to be great. Save this video and hold Howard Lutnick to his word. Are things going to be better in 6 months? Are things going to be better in a year? I cannot imagine that is the case. In fact, many of the conversations that I have privately with my friends are, can you even, not even talking about the economy. We say, can you even imagine what things look like in 6 months, given what has already transpired in just 6 months? It's actually a scary thought. But Howard Lutnick, his main excuse here, his main explanation for the labor market deterioration, for the poor jobs report, is they just haven't purged enough people. There's still people in the institution who are out to get Donald Trump, and we just need to purge more people, and then it will be problem solved. The numbers will be great, I guess. So that's the first excuse. Let's put that to the side because we have two more excuses that we need to go through. This one from the Secretary of Labor.
Only 22,000 jobs added in August. Labour Secretary Laurie Chavez de Rima joins me now. Madam Secretary, welcome back to the show. It's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
The job market's slowing. Surely there is no excuse for the Fed not to lower interest rates sharply. I'm sure you agree with that, Madam Secretary.
Absolutely. Jerome Powell should be embarrassed by this report because he has not done his job. You know, the president was right in 2016, and the president is right now. Everybody has done their job. The president in his tariff talks, the trade deals, the trade deficit, making sure that that is for the American people, that he has balanced that. Congress did their part in passing the One Big Beautiful Bill, the working tax cuts for Americans. But Jerome Powell has not done his job. He needs to lower that interest rate so that makes sure all three legs of that stool are doing their job for the American people.
Do tariffs have anything to do with this slowing job market?
Tariffs are working.
Okay, so it's not that we still haven't gotten rid of all of the people who want to sabotage Donald Trump. It's actually that Jerome Powell needs to lower interest rates. Is that right? So someone should have told Howard Lutnick before he went on TV that that was actually going to be the excuse. It's not that people need to be purged still. And of course, we have the endless Trump praise. It never gets more comfortable to hear that because it feels so forced, and you can tell it's just a performance. Should he be watching the TV? Of course, he's doing everything right. Donald Trump is doing everything right. We don't want to upset Donald Trump. He's a good guy. He's doing everything right. Maybe he's not, Secretary of Labor. Maybe he's not. Maybe we want to consider that. But okay, we have one more explanation for why we have a terrible jobs numbers report.
Let's go ahead and get your hot take. It's not the number you wanted. It was not the number that was expected. How come?
Right. Well, one of the things we know is that they've been really at BLS struggling with bad response rates. And Goldman Sachs put out a study yesterday that said that they've been messing up the August seasonal so much that over the last 10 to 15 years, they've tended to have to revise up the number by around almost 70,000 jobs when they get the new final surveys.
So it's their fault?
And so, well, I'm saying that this number, we expect this number will be revised up. That's been the pattern over and over. And if that happens, then it'll be consistent with all the other indicators we're seeing. Industrial production is at an all-time high. Capital spending is up 8% over the first half of the year after it being mostly flat under Joe Biden. And also within the jobs report we got today, there are a lot of really interesting and positive patterns. Thing one is that all the job creation is private sector job creation. Government workers are actually, their employment declined by 100,000. All of the job creation is native-born workers, whereas about half of the job creation under Biden was foreign-born workers. And so there are a lot of real positive things to see. And the final thing is that the wage numbers are fantastic. The wage growth is almost at 4%, which means that the typical wage earner in America right now has gotten a $500 raise already because of Donald Trump's policy.
Okay, so the revisions for June and July collectively were lower.
We're lower.
And you're saying the revisions for next month will come back. We'll see whether or not that's the case.
Yeah, and there's another big revision next week. But the point is that these numbers, the reason why they're getting revised so much is that these numbers are based on surveys, and people are kind of not filling out the surveys until the last minute, and so that the share of surveys that have actually been filled out at the beginning of the month is way lower than it used to be.
Okay, so Kevin Hassett, the director of the National Economic Council, he says the number is wrong. It's not that we need to purge more people. It's not that Jerome Powell should be embarrassed and he needs to cut rates. It's that the survey responses are down and the number is actually wrong, and it's going to be updated in the future. It's going to be changed. It's going to be adjusted to be more accurate. So 3 different explanations. Also, it's kind of confusing, right? Because they want Jerome Powell to cut rates, but then they're also saying the numbers are being manipulated by people who are out to get Trump, but also the numbers are down because of lack of survey responses. And I don't know, maybe the answer is just more simple than that. You don't need to reach for all of these different explanations. It's just that Donald Trump doesn't know what he's doing, and he's ruining the economy with his economic policies and tariffs. You could just say that. You could just be honest. And listen, this is more than, dunking on Donald Trump. This is more than, oh, look at Donald Trump's failures, look at his terrible economic policies, because we need to focus on the fact that there's a real impact here. There's going to be real pain here, particularly for the working class. And we're starting to see some of these headlines come forward, right, of people who voted for Trump, who then realize, oh, that was a mistake because now I'm the one who's hurting because of these policies. And people are starting to realize that. And unfortunately, I think we're going to see more of that. So this isn't necessarily a dunk on Trump and his terrible jobs report and, oh, look at all this. We still have to focus on the fact that there's real pain, real damage, real people that are going to be affected by all of this. And unfortunately, Donald Trump, all of his sycophants and his administration, they don't care about that. What they care about is making sure Donald Trump looks good, which is strange because that's impossible to do. Just setting yourself up for failure, honestly. What do you think? I would love to know. Jesse would love to know. Call and leave him a fewer than 3-minute voicemail at 714-576-4054 or send him an email to daily@dollemore.com. You can support the work that we do here over on I Doubt It podcast or right here on this channel or over on my channel where I host the Page Perspective, and would love to have you subscribe. Just a little plug at the end. I haven't done it too much today. I think it's a good amount, a decent amount. You can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/IDoubtItPodcast or become a channel member here on Jesse's channel for as little as $1.99 a month. And that really goes a long way to help produce the work that he does here, that we do here. So thank you so much for joining me today. I am always happy when I have the opportunity to guest host, talk through the news with you all, hear from you. The feedback from you guys is awesome. Please be sure to leave a comment below. And as always, be genuine. Take care of one another.